I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right.
That was awesome.
This is a rambunctious crowd.
It is a rambunctious crowd.
These morning podcasts are good.
So here we are, West Point, Mississippi, home of Mossy Oak and a host of other things. The Mossy Oak Golf Course.
Lots of stuff.
The kennels.
Yep. The
Mossy
nursery.
Oak Fishing
We've
Companions.
got the winningest football program in the Mississippi's history at West Point High School.
Yep.
We have supposedly the greatest sports dynasty in Mississippi history in the Oak Hill golf team.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've been
8 consecutive state championships. So we've got a lot of cool stuff
And
going
give a
on
shout
here.
out to Wells, too.
Yeah, we had young Wells Williams just played in the U.S. Open
Yeah.
right here in West Point, Oak Hill.
Get the horns.
Yeah.
Mossy Oak, Wold Waverly.
Boom.
Yeah, a lot to be proud of here.
Yeah, it
a lot
is.
to be proud of.
Yeah.
And we have Bobby Cole.
Yeah.
yeah.
Fresh out of the dentist office.
Hit the horns.
Womp, womp,
Yeah.
womp.
Now,
Yeah.
well, guys, this is going to be a really good one today. And before we turn our attention to our guest, I want to just look at Dudley. Dudley, a couple weeks ago, I asked you to. We're going to do some Ask Dudleys here in July.
Oh, we're breathing
Oh,
some
yeah.
air back
Would
in.
you
Wow.
can you titillate our audience with what might
Mark
be
that time code.
Yeah.
might
Can
be
you say
coming
that?
down the
Start
pipe
over.
here?
Start over. We what our audience?
Titillate.
No.
Hopefully we can just talk about some fun habitat-related stuff and hyper-focus on that.
I have a question for him already.
Okay.
So
Well, good.
I'm not going to ask it right now. But
Okay. But you're working on these then.
Yeah, I mean, they're right here.
Okay. All right. Well, that tells me a lot.
Okay.
Toxie,
Hi, Bobby.
how are your sunflowers?
They're kind of dormant right now, waiting for a rain. I hadn't had
We need some
one
rain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in fact, we hadn't had any rain. Just did have some moisture, and they are, thank goodness, very drought tolerant. But we need a rain in the worst way. Look, the farmers need it worse than me. I see wilted corn.
Yeah.
I see dead, and that's an ask Dudley. These trees are just dying everywhere. Oak trees, only oaks.
Yeah, a
Or
lot.
the ends of the
That's the
branches are
cicadas.
dying, and I saw
Red
That's
oaks.
the cicadas.
yeah,
Red oak.
actually a post oak too.
Isn't that the cicadas? They said there's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
fall off, so the cicadas have planted
Y'all
their
are
eggs.
y'all
and
are kind of getting into my Ask
luffing off.
Dudley here.
Well, you're not starting until July, so we
Okay.
got time. They'll forget about it.
But yeah, so if you were
that's
to
what
go,
you're saying.
if you were to go on a walk where you can see a tree line and it's a lot of oaks and things, you'll see brown spots from a distance.
It's
And
like
that-
the end of the limbs.
right.
That's
so,
the cicada.
So the cicada puts her ovipositor in the stem and lays eggs, and it causes damage to the stem. It almost looks like a zipper, for lack of a better way of describing
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But on the newest growth, where it was less hardened,
Right.
it damaged it. Whereas they do the same thing further down the branch, but
But I'm
doesn't
not
make-
seeing it on other trees almost at all.
it's
And
fun
could
Well, you're
be
just
they're
seeing
more
it.
vulnerable.
You're seeing it on the trees they want to
You know,
go to.
where they planted.
Don't
their
you
eggs.
think with the pretty extreme drought, it's putting even more stress than normal on that particular?
Possibly, but it's all the newest growth. We're also seeing a lot of red oaks just randomly dying. I've been having a lot of folks asking about that. So
Hate to
that's
see that.
something that
No.
something we need to be looking into.
We do.
So back on the cicadas though. So they're planting at the end of the thing, and then that thing falls off. Isn't that when the eggs drop to the ground and then they burrow in the ground?
Yeah, and I'm not an entomologist. I'll go ahead and throw that out there.
I'm pulling this
but
from the
Dudley,
podcast we did.
remember I
That's
showed
what he
you
told us.
I showed you the post oak in my
Did you not
yard,
listen?
and all the tips had fallen, and all. Do you think that was what was happening back in 8 weeks ago? Because I mean, it looked like the whole tree would have died. So much branch tips had fallen. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. If you look at it now, it looks totally normal. I thought something was
No,
happening to
that's
the
the
tree.
cicada.
Yeah.
I
Probably
figured it had. I've never seen it. I figured it had.
Risa came by
Yeah.
saying the same thing. I'm like, that's just the ends of the limbs from the cicadas falling off. Yeah.
Well, I learned
every
something.
13 years or 17 years or something like that.
So again, then I think the eggs go to the ground. Those larvae burrow in the ground, and they'll come out 13, 17 years later.
There's holes everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Swiss cheese.
It's funny, in my house, there's not many holes just because the water table's so low.
Wow.
If you find one on a hump, though, it's got
Yep.
holes in it.
It does.
Sorry.
All right, we got the cicada thing to talk through.
Sorry,
Looking
Torry.
over on the let me go
He's
ahead and
like,
introduce our
thought we
guest.
were talking
can
about
jump in
coyotes.
here. Yeah, we are. And Mac, I want before we close out today, I want to ask you about Wilkes and his fishing. How's that going? So, is he catching anything?
Oh yeah, we had some fun on some topwater the other day.
All right, that's good. Them kids need to go fishing. That's for sure.
For sure.
All right, so we're going to talk coyotes today, and we heard about a guy, and let me go ahead and introduce him, Torry Cook.
In the house.
From over in Arkansas, near Monticello, but I think it's even smaller than that. What is it, Jonesville?
Johnsville.
Johnsville.
I live in the middle of nowhere, so it's 17 miles from the nearest town.
Well, Monticello is a pretty.
It's fair size.
War
They've got
Eagle boats are right there.
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch
the
of
Ward
boats made up
family.
there.
Yeah,
30 minutes away from the house.
metropolis over there.
I think Sea Arc's made there, too.
So
Is that
you're
right?
you're just kind of west of the Delta, but
Just a
in
little west and a little south. I'm in pine timber.
Yeah.
Big. Everything's timber harvest there. Pine trees.
Okay.
So the way we found out about Torry, he's pretty unique. This guy he's into making game calls. He's won calling contests for coyotes, numerous ones, and I'm told he's dominated that. But he has raised a pack of coyotes, and he did it. We'll learn why he did it, how he did it, the whole process. But my understanding is he did it to kind of learn about them, to make him a better hunter, which is pretty interesting. And as gamekeepers, coyotes, we have to kind of keep coyotes on the brink because they pose a lot of problems for us.
Yeah.
So, Torry, I'll just throw out the first question, and it just in general, could you just take a moment and tell us a little bit about you? And I'll go ahead and say you're probably the first guy in here that probably deserved to be wearing a tank top. You're not wearing a tank top, but you got the biggest biceps I think I've ever seen.
Bobby's jealous over there.
Well, hey,
Call him Sir Bobby.
starting out, I'm gonna talk about my parents a little bit, and the whole bicep deal kind of originated from them, and especially in today's world. My parents always raised me. A boy was supposed to be big and strong. That turned him into a man, and little girl was supposed to be sweet and nice and do ladylike things and turn into a wife and mama. So I always kept that stuff. I was supposed to be, big, strong, manly man. So I've always tried to do that. But as far as
It worked.
Yeah. So when we saw, when Rob said I've got a guest named Torry, I thought, well, I wonder what that person's pronouns are because Torry, can go. But looking at you, there's no doubt what kind of.
well, here's one for you. My wife's name is also Torry. We're both named Torry.
Wow.
Sounds like a movie from the World War. Tory.
Yeah. And she's completely opposite. She's very feminine, long hair, good looking, whole completely opposite of me.
Ken Ivy, isn't his wife's name?
Ivy.
Ivy.
Yeah.
Now I thought that was the most bizarre thing, but so the phone
Careful
rings.
now. This is not bizarre.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Unique. Somebody calls and says, well, I need to speak to Torry. You guys got to figure out who they want.
Funny deal on that is my wife does all the she does the bulk of the MFK stuff. So she's answering emails, messages, phone calls with the name Torry. A lot of the way that she types is, like a woman would. She may put a pink heart or anything like that in and then get a reply back, thanks, man. They think they're talking to me. So I don't know what kind of impression they get of me with these pink hearts. And that
We'd have a lot of
type
fun
stuff.
here, but I am not touching that one, and we can move on. I'm not touching it.
That's it. She'll come back. She's like, these people think that they're talking to you, and they keep calling me brother and man. Brother. And I said, well, I'm just worried about the impression that you're giving them of me.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people The ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
The Furminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Furminator does the rest. Check it out at thefurminator.com.
So how'd you get into all this stuff?
Well, my background, and I said I like to mention my parents in this because now I'm of the age to give credit where I feel like it's due. And
There you go.
If you'd asked me this question a few years ago, I'd have been more selfish and said, I figured all this out on my own. But from early on, my dad toted me to the woods from before I could remember. And I credit him with teaching me just basic woodsmanship, just tracks and all that kind of stuff. He would pull out a compass and, take compass reading before we'd go into the woods. And the whole time I was learning about scrapes and hooking and just the whole deal. And I knew that I was going to be quizzed along the way. Every trip we made, I was going to be quizzed on the stuff that I was learning, where the truck was, how to get back out. This is before all the GPS stuff. I didn't realize it until now, but a lot of that stuff that he taught me factored into being able to raise these coyotes and giving me the interest in the animals and learning about the animals, and then also loving, to hunt and kill animals. And then where my mom came in to that, I feel like played a big role in where I'm at today too, because when I would get back home, she was always big on constructive criticism, and I would get quizzed about stuff. Bring any kind of animals home, whether it be a snake, a salamander, baby squirrels, possums, we raised it all. And she was fundamental in teaching me about that stuff. And then also at the same time, if I went squirrel hunting and the limit of squirrels when I was a kid was 8 in Arkansas, if I came back with 7, she would build my confidence and, tell me how good I was a great hunter and all this, build my confidence. And then she'd ask me why I came back without that 8th squirrel. So that made me, have a kind of a competitive drive, and I'd put effort into stuff at an early age with my hunting or my sports. I was decent at basketball, probably can't tell looking at me, but I played a lot of that early on. Every game, she was the loudest one there and cheered me on and built my confidence. And I may be the leading scorer and make 9 out of 10 free throws, but at some point, I was going to get that criticism of, yeah, you done good in this game, but why'd you miss that one free throw? And so I would spend hours with, putting in effort, and I feel like it built a discipline, and just I carried that over into my hunting and raising those coyotes and all of that stuff, the call building, everything. I was trying to be better, just better at the call building, better at the calling. It's when I started raising the coyotes, trying to do something that was a little different and just
How long
keep
ago?
taking
How
that.
long ago was that?
The raising of the coyotes?
Yeah, about.
I think I raised that would have been about 6 years ago when I raised the first litter. And we've raised approximately, at this point, I think I've raised and recorded, my wife and I, we're getting up there around 30 coyotes at this point.
Wow.
That we've raised and recorded. And most of the time, those are litters of, the first litter we raised was a litter of 3 pups, and then 4, and then 6, and it just kept progressing from there with raising them and learning about them. And
Are they as smart? Are they as smart as everybody says they are?
They are. They are fascinating to learn about, and it's fascinating to see how quick. Everybody knows how smart canines are in general, just dogs, teaching them tricks, some of the things that they can learn. Coyotes don't, they're not obedient like a dog is, so you can't teach them obedience type stuff. But as far as their ability to learn, process stuff, remember things,
Intelligence.
they are very intelligent, and it doesn't take much to what a lot of people would refer to as educate them. Pretty much everything that happens, they take it as a positive or a negative, and they'll log it, and remember that. And it doesn't take very much at all for them to be able to remember something, whether it be a sound or an experience. So they are very slick. The way that they use their nose and, you know, all of their instincts, I've learned a lot about.
So it's interesting. You call them coyotes, which I think probably most everybody here at the table does, but we also hear coyote. You know, and there's a where's
like
that
it's more
difference?
Western.
Is that more of a Western thing?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'll hear people, you know, coyote and, you know, just a different pronunciation. And I think it's just, you know, the Southern versus Northern, and then the way some of the slang terms with our dialect from North to South changes.
Texas, I've heard them come coyote.
Yeah.
Coyote.
Coyote.
Yeah, Mike, how do you say it?
Coyote.
Oh, yeah, he's got that Spanish accent going on.
What's funny, I'm glad you brought that up. One of my favorite things to do is turn on the closed captioning on the videos that we do, the hunting videos, because it always says that I'm hunting cows or coats. You know, that. So if somebody's reading the captioning on there, it says we're going cow hunting. And that's what they get out of the closed captioning. So
Something's
all
right. Yeah. Yotes too.
So tell us about these the first coyote. How did you end up with some?
Well, I had before we started raising the coyotes, I'd progressed and got into call building, and got into the hunting coyotes pretty regular, and was starting to do that as a business. As MFK progressed with the call building side of it, of course, the e-call.
Tell us what MFK is real quick.
MFK stands for Made for Killing. It's made for killing game calls. It started out as, I was always a big diaphragm turkey guy. So I built my own turkey diaphragms, and that just progressed as I started building my own turkey diaphragms. I got into coyote hunting. And because I'd always loved using diaphragm calls, I was doing some coyote hunting with hand calls and stuff like that, and some of the e-calls. But I wanted to be able to call them with a diaphragm. I was just comfortable using one and could run one for turkeys pretty good. So I started tinkering with specifically building diaphragms to try to voice them for specific coyote and prey vocals, rabbits, coons, howls, pup distress, all that kind of stuff. And as that progressed, I ended up getting into the e-call side of it with the sounds. And so that's where the need for sounds and better sounds, and also by that time we had kind of broke into the predator market fairly well. And so I was going back to the stuff I said about my parents earlier, I was just driven to try to do a little better. You know, this wasn't good enough. I wanted something a little better. So I started thinking, you know, what can we do that hadn't been done or that's not out there that will help us get better sounds? And I was just racking my brain on how to record wild coyotes at close range or something. And of course there wasn't much options on that. Well, I got the opportunity to get some pups. There were already some guys out there that had captive coyotes that they were recording in like a dog kennel and stuff like that. I really didn't want to go that route because it was already being done. So I said, I wonder if, and my wife and I talked about this, I said, I wonder if we really put the time, invest the time in this, can we raise these coyote pups? If we can get our hands on some, can we raise them, replicate the process just like it would happen in a natural setting, kind of mimic the way the adults raise the pups, do everything outside? And we're lucky enough to live, Arkansas has rules, you know, their regulations allow us to have wildlife like that. So, and we had the land available to, you know, to have the area to do it. So we got the first litter of 3 pups. And we basically dedicated our lives to trying to raise those coyote pups to where they wouldn't run off and that they could be free range and, you know, act as coyotes would in the wild, or as close as possible to the way that they would in the wild, make all of those vocalizations, behaviors, document that process so that I could learn about them and their behaviors throughout the year, document their entire life cycle, and at the same time record all of those vocalizations that they do it at close range in a natural setting. And that's how it got started. And my wife was, she's been instrumental in that process behind the scenes. She did a lot of the early, especially the early feeding, and it was a 24-hour a day deal. I mean, we were that first batch, and I learned a lot from that, especially comparing it to now. That first batch we spent more time with those coyotes in the woods than we did in our own house, and we just made them a makeshift den. Mimicked what a real den would look like, put those pups in there, and then we would feed them. I started doing coyote research, how all that works, and we would try to feed those coyote pups just like the process is in the wild with the adults coming back regurgitating food. Of course, we weren't going that far, but we were trying to mimic that process. We would make those pups come up, or let those pups come up and tug on you and stuff, nudge on you. That triggers the adult to regurgitate.
Yeah.
And so we would let those pups, instead of going down there and just dumping out the food, we had a mix that we made that would mimic the regurgitated food, and we would make those coyote pups go through that process. Then we would feed them, and then that just continued as they grew.
Now, how old were these pups when you got them?
The key is them having their eyes closed. So they still had their eyes closed, and now that I know what I know about them, that first batch of coyotes that I had were probably a week old when I first got them.
So I'm thinking about like a puppy. This is way younger than you would get a puppy.
Oh, yeah. Their eyes will open at roughly about 13 to 15 days. Their eyes start opening, and I've learned that if their eyes and their ears are closed too. So if you get a coyote pup prior to their eyes and ears opening, you have pretty good luck with them. If their eyes and ears are already open, especially if they make it to 3 weeks where their vision and ears, they become accustomed to their surroundings, their wild instincts kick in, and you can keep them alive. You can feed them, raise them, keep them alive, but it's a wild coyote. You know, they're just a wild coyote that those instincts kick in, and they, you know, you'd have to put them in a pen to keep them. You know, they would run off. They will show. They act like a coyote does when you catch it in a trap. You know, the defensive posture and skittish.
And that's just a week or two difference.
Right.
That's interesting.
3 weeks. Anybody that calls me and asks me, I always tell them 3 weeks and under. If they're over that, you can get them where their eyes are starting to crack between that 2 to 3 week time period and still have decent luck. But if their eyes and ears are fully opened, it's not a good idea to try to keep one, raise it as a pet or anything like that. And they don't make very good pets anyway, even if you get them early.
Yeah, I was going to. If people listen to this, this isn't like something folks need to get excited about and go try to raise up a coyote. It seems like a problem.
They're nasty. They're a lot rougher than, you know, especially if you're going to try to keep them in. There are people that do it, but like I said, you're not going to train a coyote to do stuff like a dog does. I mean, they don't have that obedience about them. Yeah. And
so is there any regulations about doing that at all? You know, because I know you can't.
I want to know exactly how you get the babies.
So in Arkansas, as long as you can take up to, and there's a list of animals, coyotes being one of them. There are some, you used to could take deer from the wild. Now with CWD, you can no longer have deer. No. I used to raise deer when I was a teenager for the same reason that I raised the coyote, strictly to learn about them, to try to help me with bow hunting them. Okay. And but once the CWD stuff come along, you couldn't take deer anymore. I think skunk, they took skunk off the list too, just because of disease and stuff like that. But coyote, fox, bobcats, you can have up to 6 per household. And then of course some of the running pens, there's other regulations that can allow you to have more, stuff like that. But typically you can take up to 6 by hand from the wild in Arkansas and keep them. Most other states don't allow that. There are very few, and then some have regulations where you have to have a permit to get them, or you have to buy them from a breeder or something along those lines. That was another thing that played a big role in, you know, my wife and I having success with it, is we were fortunate to live in a state that allowed that. Mm-hmm. So that played a big role in it.
I can remember the first time Daddy hired a coyote trapper. He learned all kind of fascinating stuff. but he was catching them live and selling them to people.
Yeah, pretty
Live,
common thing.
and they have coyote pens to run dogs.
I remember those.
And I've never seen or heard of that before or after, but that's what he was doing. But that would have been in the 90s.
I think it
You
used
still
to
see
be
'em in
common
Alabama.
to like train your foxhounds
Yeah.
on coyotes.
We've seen coyote
run-
pens.
Yeah,
So-
and I've heard that too.
Yeah, so this was in Alabama, but
Yeah.
the coolest story, and of course he might have been full of it, you can verify it or not, but so he set the traps, and that's the first time we've done any trapping like that, and he said, I won't catch a lot right away, but the next time I set them, it'll kick in gear more, if that makes sense.
That's true.
And so they went, Daddy wanted to go with him, so I remember he rode with him, and he came up on a pretty big one, and he said, that's a female. And so anyway, he was looking at it, and there were several carcasses there. And he said, she had all that with her when she was caught? He said, no, her mate's been bringing her food.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, they're so smart. And so does that strike a nerve with you that they would do something like that?
Yes, that typically happens with denning coyotes.
Isn't that
when
crazy?
the female is in the hole. There's a lot of interest and stuff. And
That's
it's funny
amazing.
you brought up you bringing up the coyote pen and the trapping deal.
Yeah.
My first I guess job you could call it, when I was a kid, Daddy taught me how to trap. So I started out with water trapping and stuff like that, then got into the land trapping, fox and coyotes. And that's what I did was I ran a trap line every morning before high school, junior high and high school, and I would catch fox and coyote live, put them in a canvas, big heavy canvas mail sack, tote them
Once you
things
got
back.
it, did they quit struggling as soon as you got their eyes covered?
They usually sull up. Most of them will sull up in the trap, and you can. Eventually, got it to where I could just take them out of the trap by hand.
Wait a minute,
Used to, I'd catch them with a catch pole.
No wonder you built up those biceps.
Wait, sull up.
They kind of just give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a possum. That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
There you go.
they'll cower and sull. Occasionally, you'd get an aggressive one, but
That's some water for you.
I appreciate it. But yet, the bulk of them will sull up. Once you get so close to them, they may show aggression with their posture and their teeth, but as you close in on them, they will sull up and cower down. And once you get your hands on them, they basically go into almost like a shock mode. So you can pick them. They don't struggle. Typically, you just grab them, pick them up. I'd throw them in that big heavy-duty mail sack. And of course, this was all walking when I was a kid. So sometimes, and I typically I was only catching 2 or 3 per morning. Sometimes I would have to make a double trip, but a lot of times I might have 3 gray fox in that sack over my shoulder and tote it back to the house. We had a cage we could throw them in, and then we'd call. There were 2 or 3, and some of them are still operating today. They were running pens for the hounds, and they were coyote and fox running pens. And so we'd call up the guy, and I was, at the time, I think I got, if I remember right, a gray fox was worth 50, a red fox was worth 75, and a coyote was worth 100. That was about my average for
This
what I
was a
got.
long time ago, but I do remember he was getting 100 for the coats in the 90s,
Yeah.
late 90s.
And most of that stuff it's still there a little bit. Like I said, there's still a couple of coyote pens running, but everybody knows what's happened to the fur market. So I still love trapping. I'm going to teach my grandson how to trap just because I think that's something good for kids to know how to do. But now I primarily, call and don't do much. Do much trapping anymore.
Amazed that, like, I hear you talk about them sulling, but it seems like every now and then one of them's going to say, I'm just going to lay here, and when he gets close, I'm going to eat him up.
They're few and far between. There are some that you need a catch pole, because there are some of them that would try to bite you, but it's very few. I learned, initially I caught everything with a catch pole until I realized, these things are just cowering down, sulling up, and I don't really have to carry this pole with me every time. So,
And you probably understand their behavior
yeah.
enough to,
Do you use Duke traps?
I had a variety. I had some Dukes. I had some Victors. I had a variety of everything. My grandpa was a big trapper, so I got some traps from him. My dad had traps, and then all of my birthdays and Christmases, I mentioned earlier, one of my earlier Christmas presents was mossy oak green leaf camouflage.
Yeah, that was a good one.
First,
sound the horns on that
first,
one. Man. Come on.
But
God, I love him.
yeah, and I still have. That's what I was telling y'all. I still have a package of that in the plastic.
Well, it was a
that
good
I
investment, by the
outgrew.
way. Just look on eBay today. It was a good investment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I'm guessing when some of us may have been playing golf in the summer or going to the pool, you probably were barefoot in the middle of the forest, just running around, building forts, trapping stuff, just
living off the land.
Yeah.
I love it.
You must be psychic.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
pretty much nailed it.
Yeah.
I was fortunate the whole time. Even now, I've always lived. I grew up on the outskirts, rural area. You could leave my house, and that's what I trapped on. We had a creek 100 yards from the house, and that creek ran all the way to the Saline River.
And you probably didn't sleep in very much either.
Man, there wasn't many songbirds around the house when I was a kid. Woke up with a BB gun, and
Yeah.
that's how the day was spent. I never was into video games or any of that. I spent my time outside, and again, a lot of that goes back to that interest came from my parents, both of them, just constantly putting that stuff in front of me, and I had a very big interest, not only in the hunting, but I mean, y'all's name says it all. The gamekeeper, that type lifestyle, the interest in the animals, the interest in conservation of the animals that you love to hunt, all of that just carried over from turkey to deer to coyotes and anything else that I've got into.
Manny, you look like you're about to die to ask a question.
Yeah, it was just so interesting that, listen to you talk about how you got into coyote hunting is obviously something really precious to us, which is the wild turkey and turkey hunting altogether. It seems like you would probably have a better understanding of the impact that coyotes and other predators have had on turkeys than anybody. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, and everything.
On everything, not just turkeys, but
yeah.
just on wildlife habitat in general, since the fur market has fallen out.
Right. Yeah, I think the impact that predation has on, of course, turkeys, fawns, just all of that stuff is a big deal, and it's a complex subject because coyotes are a lot like hogs in that they're hard to control. I know Mississippi's got hogs just like Arkansas
they're
does.
awful. They're awful.
And they are, some people will tell you that there's no point in trying to control predators because they're just going to repopulate. Right. Well, that's true to a certain degree. Same thing with hogs. It's a never-ending process, but I've been able to learn enough about coyote reproduction, how that takes place throughout the year. And if you have property and you're managing for turkeys and you're managing for deer and you want to up the odds of those animals surviving, your main focus animals, then there are ways. It's an ongoing process. You can't just go kill a few coyotes, trap a few coyotes, and expect that to take care of your problem. It's an ongoing management practice, just like everything else is with your habitat management or your food plots. It's a constant deal. But there are ways to help your fawns and your turkey poults and stuff like that survive. And with coyotes, the main thing is the time of the year that you kill them. A lot of that goes back to coyote reproduction. They breed once a year. So at any given time, and anybody that foals with turkeys, deer, anything else, that your land, your habitat has a certain carrying capacity. It just does. It supports X amount of animals. The same holds true with the coyotes. So your pup breeding.
When are they breeding?
February is basically Valentine's Day. That's an easy way to remember peak coyote breeding across the nation, roughly Valentine's Day. And it can, they can breed as early as, into January or even as late as March. But that peak time frame is going to be roughly Valentine's Day, that February 14th, 15th time frame.
Right when we're at the NWTF convention.
Yeah, celebrating turkeys. We need to be killing coyotes.
Well, you can remember as soon as deer season closes. or right at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's drill into what you said
Yeah.
about the things that a guy can do to help help you stay on top of these coyotes. Let's drill in there.
So the coyotes breed in February, and once they have pups in roughly April, that's going to be your highest number of coyotes on the landscape as a whole. With your property, you're going to have property that's favorable for deer, turkeys, and of course coyotes too. So when you're trying to manage for coyotes, those fawns that are typically hitting the ground in spring, same thing with your turkey poults, that coincides with when the coyote pups. Pup rearing time frame for coyotes, denning pup rearing time frame. So that's when those coyotes are trying to actively feed those pups, catch your turkey poults and your fawns. So a good way to help out with your fawns is to target coyotes and coyote family groups in particular, especially if they're resident coyotes on your property. If you can take out any or all of those coyotes off your property, even though it's true that at some point other coyotes are going to fill that hole, when you take one out, it creates a hole for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
During that time frame, your fawns, your poults, they get another day. Every day that they get increases the odds of them surviving. So taking the best time to do predator control in relation to deer and turkey management is going to be during that spring, summer time frame when you have fawns and turkey poults on the ground, as well as when you've got the coyote pups, because they can't breed for a full year. So the more coyotes you take off your property, especially if they're resident coyotes, the more holes you create. And somewhere, I mean, just simple math. If you've got 50 coyotes and you kill 5, there's only 45 coyotes. So at some point, somewhere, a hole can't be filled. There's not a coyote to fill it until the following year. Argument from go ahead.
Well, boy, when you said 45 coyotes, I'm like, oh, how big a place is that? But so how many pups on average do they have, and what does a den look like?
Well, when I said 45, I was just kind of throwing out a number for
yeah, well, you kind of scared me.
Stuff, but
Bobby.
yeah, so typically, the most that I've ever seen as far as stuff that we've raised was 6 on the upper end and 3 on the lower end. So I think probably, they can have as many as 12, 14, 15 pups. There are documented cases of them having that many. But I think your average pup size in a healthy female is probably going to be in that 6 to 8 range most of the time. So if you have a family group of coyotes living on your property, and depending on what size property you have, you may have more than one group. But most properties are not that large. Usually there's a couple of miles between family groups of coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take out, let's just say you've got a family group, a lot of times that will consist of 2 to 3 adults, sometimes more, but on average 2 to 3 adults, and then however many pups they have. So let's just shoot it on the high side and say that let's say they have a litter of 10. Well, you could have roughly a family group of 13 coyotes on your 200-acre property. Your turkey poults, your fawns are hitting the ground. If you go in early enough, while those pups are still in the hole, if you kill that female coyote while the pups are still in the hole, then you've eliminated the female and the pups.
Mm-hmm.
So you've taken out 11 of the 13 off your property right there and created a big improvement for the odds of your poults and fawns to survive.
Yeah, if not avoid there for
right
a period of time.
At some point, and depending on how attractive a property is, if you've got chicken house ground, if you've got feedlots like Texas feedlots, stuff like that, if you have something that is extremely attractive to coyotes, you're going to have more trouble controlling the population because you've got what they would refer to as transient coyotes that are constantly checking in, wanting to fill one of those holes. But there are a lot of properties. I do a lot of predators, I guess you could call it, control, where somebody will call me and they'll say, hey, I've got these coyotes on my lease, or I've got these coyotes on my property. They're doing whatever. They're killing my fawns, or they're killing my goats, or whatever the case may be. We'll go in and kill those coyotes, and sometimes you don't hear back from them. I mean, that takes care of their problem for a long period of time, and they don't have issues with coyotes. In other places, it's pretty frequent, you know, kind of like a hog problem along a river. You know, it's just constantly hogs coming up and down that river. You're going to have to stay on top of them. But if you do that with the coyotes, and especially if you do it during your spring, summer time frame, even though at some point coyotes are going to fill back in, taking out those coyotes during that time frame is going to up the odds. You're going to have more fawns and you're going to have more turkeys that make it. You know,
that makes sense.
The following year.
I've just got so many questions. So, like, you know, in the wintertime, deer hunting, sitting in a stand, you'll hear coyotes start just like going crazy. It sounds like 2 or 3 or 4, and they're just yipping real fast.
Right.
What's going on? What are they doing there? What are they trying to tell each other? Are they hunting, or what's happening?
A lot of times it's just that's their way of assembling and also announcing. You know, a lot of times when you hear that, you'll hear another group in the distance crank up. And that's a way of announcing their presence and them being in this area, and another group. It's territorial stuff.
Yeah.
And them announcing that they're occupying. And coyotes will check. Now, there have been studies, you know, where people, a lot of this goes back to the anti-hunters. They'll say that coyotes do stuff like take a roll call and howl to check and keep count of the coyote population. That's not true. They're simply either, if it's known family members, they're communicating with howls to reassemble, announce where they're at within the territory, and they're also doing that to announce their location to other coyotes in neighboring territories that's showing that area is still occupied by whatever the dominant resident group of coyotes are. So that's kind of how that.
What kind of home range are we talking about for that pod or that group?
There have been a lot of GPS studies, and I keep up with all that stuff, and it varies across the board pretty big with terrain, population densities of coyotes and stuff like that. In areas where you have a higher density of coyotes, a lot of times that range is smaller. And then in areas where it's less dense, it's bigger. But on average, most of the coyotes will have a home range, and then they'll have a core area within that range. And a good average, and of course it's irregular in shape and all that kind of stuff, but about 7 miles. So they're covering this particular pair of coyotes or family group of coyotes, they're covering about 7 miles, give or take. Then their core is usually where they spend the bulk of their time is roughly 2 miles. It's what a lot of the studies have shown. And there is a lot of variation, like I said, you know.
Sure, it depends on food sources and how far they're going to travel.
Is it true that, you know, when, like Bobby was saying earlier, when you hear a bunch of them yapping away, it's usually fewer coyotes than you think, correct?
Right, yeah. 2 of them can sound, and even somebody like me that listens to them all the time, and it's still difficult to pick out how many coyotes there are, because 2 coyotes can sound like 4 or 5, and 4 or 5 coyotes will sound like 50. And that's why I get a lot of phone calls, and that's what they tell me. They're like, man, I heard 50 of them behind the house last night.
So are they?
Well, they probably heard 4 or 5.
When you hear that right at dark when you're deer hunting, are they typically like surrounding a den site, or are they just meeting up somewhere, or what?
Having a little chit chat after work.
So outside, they're pretty complex. Outside of that short period of time that they're denning, they don't fool with dens at all. You know, they don't get in the ground. They don't sleep in holes or anything. They're bedding on top of the ground like deer. And a lot of times what you're hearing with those howls right at sunset, right after sunset, stuff like that, is a family group of coyotes. So it's probably a pair of adults and maybe what they refer to as helper coyotes, which is typically a pup from the previous year, and sometimes more than one pup, that are adults, but they haven't dispersed yet. So they're still in that home range of the mated pair. And then you'll have the pups that they had that year, you know, in early fall. And what happens, family bust-up starts around August, September, right before deer season. Then you get into deer season, and when that family bust-up takes place, a lot of those coyotes haven't truly dispersed yet. They're still living in the same home range of the adults, but they're functioning as individuals, so they're spaced out. There may be several hundred yards, couple hundred yards between coyotes. In the evening, one of them will howl, and it's basically they're locating and reassembling. So even though the family group has busted up, a lot of times they will come back together for short periods of times. That's what you're hearing when, one coyote will howl, another one will howl, and a lot of times those coyotes will run together. And I've got to witness that over and over again with, the coyotes that we raised, and that's how I learned a lot about why they howl and how that all functions.
So the coyotes that you've raised, do they look at you as the leader of the pack?
I don't know for sure. There is that.
So you can walk out there.
I can walk out there and howl to them. I don't think they think that I'm part of their group or that I'm a coyote, because they still show instincts. They know that I'm a human or whatever they think, there's still that instinct part of them, but they know that I'm the food source. They know that my wife and I are the food source. And what's odd about raising coyotes in the wild is they will tolerate my smell, my wife, what they know, the two of us. We can go down there and they're fine with seeing us, hearing us, smelling us. They have a positive reaction to that. But if I take anybody else, any stranger down there, they act just like a wild coyote does. When they smell somebody new, they're gone. And I learned, I made the mistake early on with that first group of 3. I had a buddy that wanted to go down there and see them. Well, they stayed in this massive thicket, big clear-cut thicket, and I'd howl them in with my voice. Y'all may have seen some of that on the videos.
Can you do a little of that for
I sound more like a hound dog, but when I told you we started raising them, we didn't talk to them or anything. All the noises that I made, I tried to mimic what actual coyotes did. So when I would call to those pups to get them to come out of the hole when they were little, coyotes do this whimpering sound. We've got it in our library. I've recorded a lot of that, and they'll do a and that calls to each other and to the pups. So when I would go to feed, my wife and I would go down there, and I would as they got out of the hole and got more distance and were staying, they may be 200 yards away. Well, in order to call those coyotes in, I needed to howl them in. And that's how I started learning a lot about coyote vocalizations and how they reacted to it, and then being able to use that hunting to call them in and kill them. So every bit of that stuff that I was doing, I'm logging it as, all right, I'm going to use this against your kinfolk next time I go to the woods. So, but yeah, on the howling side of it, initially I'd use the diaphragms because they sound really good, sound more like a coyote, but just for ease and training those pups, I just did it with my natural voice, and all my buddies love to get me to howl because they like to laugh at it. I sound like a coon dog.
Yeah.
But
well, we'd like you to try it. If you just a soft one, don't blow us out.
Don't put pressure on it.
Hey, I don't mind. Y'all mentioned NWTF. Y'all may have heard a coon dog, and that was me.
Hey,
But,
yeah, I got a coon dog at the house.
Yeah. So a lot of the times, if they were fairly close range, when I'd get down there and wanted to call them up, I'd just, oh, and it wouldn't take more than that, and they're there. I mean, just that quick.
Instantly.
If they're farther away,
yeah, it does.
You ought to hear the full-blown version of it.
That was throttled back, huh?
Oh, yeah, that's the light version. And if they were farther away, I would have to put, I would really have to do what would be a long howl, which sounds like a coon dog bawl.
So these coyotes would come running in.
In.
And then just be all around you at that
running
point.
And jump into my arms. There was a little short video that went viral that I walk out there, and at first a lot of the comments were, I thought that guy was calling Bigfoot because I'm doing this. Oh, well, here comes these coyotes. I can't remember which litter that was. Anyway, it's 3 to 6 coyote pups come running in, and by that time they've got up. They're 3-4 months old, so they're fair size, and they come running in, and they're real aggressive, and they run in, and one of them jumps, head high, and I catch it when it jumps into my arms, and the rest of them are jumping up on me, and and then I start the whimpering and stuff like that, talking to them before I feed them. And that was a lot of the process that my wife and I did to get them to key in on us and our presence every day. And then from there, they'll do a meet and greet. They do this with each other too. When you hear those howls, they come in and they make contact. They get real excited, and that doesn't last very long. And then they don't want to be touched. I can't hardly put my hands on them. They do that meet and greet, and then they start doing their thing. And I was able to follow them through the woods, watch them catch stuff, watch them fight, pecking order fights, all that kind of stuff, learn about their behavior, document that with video, and at the same time record. I had a dedicated audio, 32-bit audio recorder that I would record all their vocalizations on up close. And that went from the time that I started recording them when they were in the hole, eyes closed in the hole, whimpering.
Wow.
And from there just progressed, them coming out of the hole, the pup pecking order fights, progressing to them learning to howl, all the way through until they became adults, all the way through until they were breeding coyotes and recording those breeding sounds and just all of that interaction. And we were able to document it and show people the behavior process, how it changes throughout the year, how that relates to hunting, the sounds associated with those times of the year, how that relates to hunting, and being able to see that on video and then hear the sounds associated with it. And then, of course, we do the hunts, too, where we take it out and we'll apply those sounds and those behavior things that we've learned. We'll use it against the coyotes and, call in hundreds of them, throughout the year to into shotgun range and shoot them, here to the wall.
Yeah.
So I've got a question. I just think about, we all have a lot of labs that run around, that we're around a lot, and I can always tell a difference. Like, I can hear my dog bark and know it's his bark.
Right.
Can you listen to those that you raised and tell which is which?
Yeah, and it's funny you brought that up because that's a topic that I get on a lot of coyote dedicated podcasts and stuff like that. If you go back and look at a lot of the books and magazines that were written about coyotes and in particular coyote vocalizations, howls, a lot of the things that were said about it early on, I've found that to be, not true. And the reason is a lot of that early on stuff was done on like Yellowstone coyotes and things like that. And they believed that coyotes recognized voices, and so if you used an adult male that it would scare other coyotes. That's true if it's known voices. So to get to your question, yes, they all have a very distinct, just like you said with recognizing your dog's bark, all the coyotes have a very distinct voice and a distinct howl pattern that they do almost every time, so one coyote, the way it does a lone howl, another coyote will do what would also be a lone howl, but they have a different variation, a different tone and a different variation. And I can recognize the voice of the coyotes that I know, and the coyotes also recognize each other's voice. And when they recognize each other's voice, those resident coyotes, those known coyotes, they also know the pecking order. So just like people, if you know somebody, you kind of know your structure. The coyotes, if they're known coyotes, they know that pecking order structure. So if it's the dominant coyote that's vocalizing, then yes, the ones that know him are submissive and subordinate. Where that differs and why that literature that was put out, why that doesn't apply to when we go out to call coyotes, and why your howls and all that stuff is so effective. And that stuff that's kind of come about, more recent. Mm-hmm. People have learned that the vocals, how effective they are. When we go out to call coyotes and you select a howl from your e-call or you howl on a diaphragm, whatever, you are just a strange coyote to any coyote that you're calling to. So the youngest pup all the way up to the biggest, baddest, oldest male coyote out there, they're all attracted to that howl because this new strange coyote, there's no pecking order associated. It's a strange coyote. They haven't fought. Nobody's whooped anybody. So you've all seen the Chihuahua that's never run across the bulldog that would jump all over him. until the bulldog puts him in his place, a few times. The same concept applies to those coyotes. And so when you go out calling, you don't have to be fearful of running a male coyote howl or any of that. And a lot of that literature said if you're going to howl, you need to use a young female pup howl so that you don't scare other coyotes. That's not true.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting.
Yeah.
So, Mac, have you got a follow up?
I do. It's in a different direction, but so raising young dogs, you always have the fear of parvo.
Yep.
So do you see that in a lot of these coyotes, and how did you handle that when you were raising them?
Did you see how Mac went from coyote to coyote in the whole and one?
I think the coyote comes from Wile E. Coyote, right? I mean, that's where it probably.
That's what I grew up calling it.
Yeah, I had to deal with that. So the first litter that I got, we treated them and vaccinated them just like we would dogs. No issues. Then I started reading about how wild animals have, and especially from the female, a lot of them get immunity from the female, and it was a bad idea if you had wild animals to vaccinate them, because if the timing was off just a little bit and it hit out wrong with whatever they're getting from that female coyote, I don't know the all the right scientific or medical terms to use that I read about, but basically they could have a chemical reaction if the timing was off on that. So the second batch of pups that we raised, I said, well, I was scared to vaccinate them. Well, I come back, it was about this time of year. I come back from a Tennessee hunting trip, went to see and my wife had been taking care of them the whole time I was gone. I get back, I was going to go down there and, check
Howl
on
them
them,
up.
howl them up. Go down there and howl them up. They come running in like nothing's wrong with them. And about that time, one of them gets to running crazy, running in a circle, falls on the ground, starts foaming at the mouth. They call it the chewing gum effect. And I don't know if I can't remember now which one it is, distemper or parvo 1. But anyway, there were 4 pups, and 3 of the 4, just within a matter of a few hours, started showing those, and I thought the one died. It was stiff-legged and tail ringing in a circle. Well, in a second or two, it come out of it. Long story short, I think it was distemper. Do y'all know which one is the chewing gum symptom?
Lanny gets it, but what
It's
is it?
distemper for sure. I had it last week.
Yeah.
I think
foaming at the mouth.
parvo's isn't it a gut ailment that gets them?
And they really crave water, I think.
Yeah.
Can you fact check
Yeah,
that?
they're
Mac?
similar.
I'm not sure, that's for sure.
I want to
neither.
say that it was distemper, but one of them, if you look up the chewing gum side effect, it's a symptom of one of the two. I think it's distemper. Anyway, luckily, my wife and daughter are big into show animals, show livestock. So they've got these sheep, and they have these drench tubes that they drench these sheep with because they're always having issues. And they had this basically like adrenaline or something that they'll give them to come out of stuff like that. Well, it was close to 48 hours with no sleep, staying out there with those pups, and when they would have these seizures, and I ended up losing one out of the bunch, and saved the rest of them. But I was having to drench them that whole time with that drench gun, and when I'd give it to them, they would pop back out of it, and you'd think they were fine. And I'd just have to keep I'd check them about every 30 minutes. And you'd go back out there, and one of them would be having a seizure or laying over there stiff. Try to pry their mouth open, run that drench gun. So that's kind of a long version of telling you that ever since then, I vaccinate them just like I did that first litter, and I hadn't had any more issues.
So how does that affect, like in the wild? I mean, does that take out a decent amount of coyotes?
It could. I know sometimes you'll have mange and stuff like that come through and get in the den, and that has a big effect on them. I know that parvo sometimes will take them out. So yeah, that can affect them, and I think it comes through, a lot like
heartworms.
So I remember, and I don't know if it's true,
Don't
but I
get me
remember
on that
Dr.
one.
Hurst, who taught me so much way early on, as he was friends with Daddy. But he was talking about the cycles of raccoons, and it was distemper.
Yep.
And it would be, he said, as clear as I can, he said there was a 7-year cycle, and it's not that they all are exactly on that cycle, but it will peak.
Yeah.
When his point back then was you could also see the reproduction cycle of success of turkeys, and it was an exact parallel with that, you know. And he said about every 7 years you'll lose a lot and they'll come back. I don't know if it's the same or not with coyotes.
I think it is. I think that's true with a lot of animals. You see it with rabbits. You know, you'll see just right now around the house, big rabbit explosion this year. And a few years ago, or the past several years, there hadn't been many. And I can't remember how many years ago it was, but it's probably in that, I would guess it's in that 6, 7.
What's their disease? Not to get off on rabbits too much, but I mean, I remember that I've always been told to be careful in handling and cleaning rabbits, that they do carry more diseases than squirrels and stuff. But I don't know if that's true. I was just always told that. Yep.
I'm not sure what takes them out. But
Did you find out anything on distemper?
Yeah, so parvo, the disease attacks the intestines and the white blood vessels, and so it is, you know, I guess intestine, like diarrhea, vomiting, fever, and
bleeding.
Yeah, and then distemper is spread through the air and urine and feces as well, but it's discharge. It's I guess signs or discharging of the eyes and nose and fever, coughing, lethargia. So they're similar. I guess in that they're similar disease.
I think parvo's more deadly, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. So let's pretend you're a guy. It's December. You're deer hunting. You're sitting in a swamp somewhere, and you can see down a lane, and a coyote walks across that lane, and he's gone. What can he reach? What can a guy reach into his pack and pull out? What can he sound like and have a hope of calling that coyote up there?
In that situation, just a simple lip squeak. If you can do simple lip squeaks, that will usually get you a shot at that.
I've tried
dog.
it so many times. Sucking on the back of your hand like that. Oh my gosh! I mean, maybe once they have.
What would you do?
I would, in that situation, I would lip squeak at them, and if that didn't work, then I would go to. In a deer hunting situation, if I was trying, I probably wouldn't try to kill the coyote myself. Right. I would keep deer hunting, but if I wanted to try to call it up, I've always got a diaphragm with me, so that would be my next deal. Or for somebody that couldn't, having a hand call with them of some kind, rabbit distress, stuff like that is a good way. Which is just a louder version, basically, of a lip squeak. To try to get them to come back in there.
I remember distinctly like bow hunting so much when I really, really bow hunted a lot. And like a bobcat would be tipping along and you could just make a little noise, all right, just a little tiny whistle, and they'd stop because the first thing a bobcat's going to do is, by my experience, is just freeze and what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
But, man, a coyote, if you did anything, or God forbid whistle, he didn't pause. It was like afterburners instantly. They don't stick around to see what was going on. They're just gone. And so finally I learned to just lead them a little bit and shoot at one walking or something because I couldn't stop them.
Walking, that's what I wanted to. One thing I wanted to ask you, I never see one walking. They're always trotting.
No, yeah.
They do. They usually are moving. And on the lip, on the lip squeak stuff, I've learned this from actually calling coyotes and specifically calling. It seems like there's a distance to it. If you squeak at them or you make a noise, then a lot of times it will make them.
Man, he didn't stick around.
Out of there.
I gave up on trying to stop him.
And I can't recollect coming up on any in the woods and seeing them run off, like you do a deer.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but it seems like they're gone long before you get close enough to jump them.
Yeah, they're pretty slick about,
oh my gosh,
knowing you're around, and they're so hard. I mean, especially cats. Cats are even worse than the coyotes. But we've called some in, and I'm watching the coyote come in, and maybe there's an edge, like a brush edge, where they will stop and hang up on that edge, and it's like looking at one of those magic pictures where you see the image come and go.
Right.
Mm-hmm. There are videos. We've got one of a cat, and you can clearly see that cat as he walks up, and then as he stops, even though he's still in view, they're so camouflaged that they just break apart, and your eyes will pick it up and then lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing them is, that tail will give them away when they're working that thing.
So I had one experience one time, and I'll ask you first though: is that have you experienced that there's a dead carcass or something? What usually wins the dominance, the coyote or bobcat? Which one kind of rules over that, or is it just whichever one's bigger?
I've seen it go both ways, but usually the cat.
So yeah, I shot a deer. Was worried about the head. It's going to be really cold. Wait till the next morning. Well, track it, and I step out on an old log road, and I look down the road, and there's a coyote just standing there, and he didn't run off. He was just standing there, maybe 100 yards, and he was looking, and then wasn't but a second, then he took off, and there was just kind of this pile there, and I got to looking real close, and I started working towards it, and all of a sudden, right there at this pile, a huge cat rises up, and this is the coyote would have been 20 or 30 yards behind it, so this was, and it rose up, saw me, and took off running. I walked up there, and I barely could see an antler coming up, and this cat had covered it up just about. Yeah. But the cat was on the carcass, and the coyote was just watching to see if he could get to it. And I never saw that before. After I experienced that, it was so strange.
Yeah,
did it have a long tail?
Time
or a
out.
short
Time
tail?
out. We got to know about this cat.
A little
now.
bit.
What kind of cat?
What
were we
kind of
talking
cat?
about?
A bobcat, of course. The cat.
Did you see the tail on it?
Was it black? y'all want to talk about calling up black panthers?
Of course we do.
Have you got a story?
100%. Do you want to talk about it? It's a question.
Yeah. So that's why I asked which one would win usually, and you did say the cat. But it was clearly this coyote wasn't getting near that carcass.
Yeah.
That bobcat probably thought, "Oh my goodness, look what I found!" And just was going to try to hide it from everybody.
But he hadn't eaten any of it yet. He'd been so busy covering it up, he hadn't even eaten any of it.
Yeah.
I was in Oklahoma and killed a deer right at dark. It was cold. We carried it up there to a big hay barn. There was and just put it under the hay barn that night.
Oh wow!
Come back the next morning, and the hams were eat. Portion of the hams were eat, and it was covered up.
Wow!
And you could see all the cat tracks in the dirt right there. And I never would have thought it would have got it. Come up there and got it under that barn where people were fooling around. There's tractors parked under it, but it did. And cat tracks all in the.
I've
in
seen
the dirt there.
deer not even been shot an hour and wait and track them, and the coyotes have already eaten a bunch of them. They get on them. They evidently get on them.
Hey guys, Dudley from Gamekeepers here. I want to tell you about the all-new Gunner Dog Bowl. It's designed for home and built for travel. It's customizable, leak-resistant, light on weight, solid on durability, and rust-proof. Like other Gunner products, they're made in Nashville and designed for everywhere.
Moultrie has pioneered the game management category. Today, Moultrie is one of the best-selling brands of feeders and seeders in the world, and they continue to innovate with new technology that gamekeepers will rely on. Moultrie products are always field-tested and designed for hunters by hunters, combining forward-thinking innovation with time-tested practicality. Moultrie, first in feeders since 1979. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at MoultrieFeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at MoultrieFeeders.com and get that 15% discount.
All this talk is making me want to learn more about how to hunt them and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So just going to go with a really broad question, but just say a group of folks who hadn't really done much coyote hunting. How do you set up? How do you get started? When's a good time of year to get have a little bit more success, that kind of stuff. And then I'd like to know what kind of gun you're using. Optics. Let's just get into some of that.
For somebody new that wants to get into coyote hunting, there is no better time. Even though it's hot and the mosquitoes and the ticks and all that kind of stuff, there is no better time to call coyotes than right now for a couple of reasons. One, they're very aggressive to the call right now because of the pup rearing. We're in the pup rearing time frame right now. So that's when they're the most aggressive, easiest to call. They're also very vocal at night and during the daytime because those family groups, those adults and pups, are communicating. So you can get coyotes to howl a lot in the daytime. And so that ties right into a turkey hunter or elk, any of that stuff where you like that vocal calling back and forth. You get to experience some of that. And to get started with it, the very best thing to do is, just like with turkeys, go out and locate where the coyotes are at. So the way that I go about doing that, and this really ups your odds. So wherever your hunting property's at, you go out and you start, and I do a lot of this on public ground. Go out and pick a spot to start. And if you have an e-call, something like that, I use a Fox Pro e-call, and then I'll use lone howls and group howls to get these coyotes to locate, just like going out and
any time of day.
Typically, I do the locating at night because
Right,
they do still howl a little better at night,
Right.
especially at a distance. They'll answer you better at night at a distance. But
It's kind of like listening for turkeys gobbling at daylight.
exactly the same process. So I start and I just pick a spot. I get out as soon as I pull up. You don't have to wait, kill the truck, hop out. And like I said, I run a Fox Pro X24. It's a pretty loud call, and I will pick a lone howl. Any lone howl. I use one called Come Here Lonely Howls, Boone Lone Whine Howls a lot because they answer those howls pretty good. And I'll do a series of those howls, whatever the series is that plays on the call. And once that 4 or 5 howls plays, I'll pause it and I'll listen for a minute or two. If nothing answers, I'll select a group howl, a family group howl, which is going to be the adults and the pups. I'll let it play through a series and listen and see if I get some coyotes to howl. When they howl, I'm listening. What I want to hear is more than one coyote. If it's one coyote this time of the year, that may just be a transient coyote that's passing through. He may not be reliable to go back and hunt. What I'm listening for is 2 or more coyotes. If I hear 2 or more coyotes, that gives me an idea that there's a family group in there. And while they're denning and pup rearing, that information is good all the way through until about August, September, unless something pressure or something like that causes them to move. So they're going to be pretty tight. Wow. Just like hearing a turkey gobbling on the same reeds, morning after morning. Mm-hmm. So I'll pull out my phone and I'll mark it on my maps.
On Onyx.
On Onyx. That's what I use too. Yeah.
They're the
I
best.
got my T-shirt on today.
Yeah. That's what I run's Onyx. I'll pull it out, and there, of course, y'all are familiar with the measuring tools on Onyx. So I'll put it on that compass mode or whatever it is, that's got the grid on, and I will get my bearing lined up, and I'm estimating how far I think those coyotes are, and I get everything lined up, and I drop a point on them. And I will continue through the night and try to put together however many groups of coyotes I can put together. Then the next morning, and this is extremely effective. I mean, your odds of success, even if you're new, are going to be really good if you try this. So go out and find a couple groups of coyotes the next morning. If you're night hunting or can night hunt, you can hunt them right then. But I always day hunt. I just like it better. And so I'll go in the next morning, and I moved right in there pretty close to where I dropped that pin. And, of course, the main thing, just like deer hunting, paying attention to your wind. That's the number one thing with coyote hunting. Just make sure that you've got the wind in your favor. And knowing where you mark those coyotes at give you those advantages because you can figure out what your wind's doing and then choose which groups of coyotes you're going to hunt based on the wind. Slip in there, get pretty close to them. Where I hunt, it's extremely thick, so you're asking what kind of, gun. I'm shooting a shotgun because it's so thick. If it's more open, stuff like a 22 250, 223, 243, basically any deer rifle that you would hunt with, you'd be good on the coyotes. But I'll move in there pretty tight to that group. And what you're doing is when you hear those coyotes, you should be able to tell the difference in the adults and the pups. You want to mark the pups, because those adults are acting as satellites around that pup rearing area. So you move in there pretty tight to those pups. Those adults are extremely aggressive. And, of course, if you're trying to manage for deer and turkeys, excellent time to go in there and kill them. They'll show you where those pups are at. You move in tight to them. And I'll typically start out with a lone howl. Once I get set up, I start with a lone howl. If they answer me and I think I can move a little bit closer, I'll move a little bit closer because distance from them plays a role in how aggressive they are coming. But if you get too close to that pup rearing area and those pups, this time of the year, they can't hardly resist coming. They're going to come. And Once I do those lone howls, they answer. I'll give them a minute or two to show up. If they don't, I'll go to a group howl, see if they'll show up on that group howl. If they don't show up on the group howl, I go to some type of what I call social interaction sounds. And the way we've got our remote set up, it's got all those different categories. I'll play one of those for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll go to pup distress sounds. And when you start playing those pup distress sounds, if they hadn't showed up on the howls or that social interaction,
They may have busted you.
They may have busted you, but if they hadn't, when you start playing those pup distress sounds, stay ready, because they're not going to come in like a deer or a turkey most of the time. They're going to fly in and fly out. So you got to be on your toes. Have your finger on the safety and ready.
I'm liking that shotgun about that time too.
Yeah,
Flying in.
Well, I mean, I like the shotgun. I thought of that because if there's multiple ones, you'd have a chance to get more than one of them.
And a lot of times it'll be the whole family group show up at one time, and
I'm gonna bet you even the best shot out here is not a real high percentage on a running wide open coyote with a rifle.
No.
Are you shooting what? You shooting buckshot?
I'm shooting Apex TSS number 2s
Yeah,
or
I've
2
heard
to
about that.
4s.
A lot of people use those heavy TSS.
Yeah, that makes
really
sense.
deadly.
How
Shoot them in the
close?
tail, knock their teeth out.
That's pretty good. Hey, that's a
How close are you
good
trying to
apex.
get? I mean, like a turkey on the limb, or how close? Like inside 300 yards, or what are you trying to?
So there's for somebody new starting out, I would tell them to probably go ahead and try to get as close to those pups as you think you can, and to try to make sure you don't bump them. I'd probably stay off of them. When you start, use your Onyx maps, and as you start closing in on that point and you see that you're getting inside 300 yards and especially 200 yards, if I get to that 200-yard mark of those pups, especially right now in, basically July, we're right here at July, those pups are still small enough that they're probably not branching out very far from where you heard them at and located them. So if you get within 200 yards of that, you're probably setting pretty good on those pups. You're plenty close enough to be a threat when those adults hear you in there close to those pups. And so that's a good range to set up. And the odds of you calling in any of the family group is really high. You'll have those pups come in, especially on the howls. The howls and the coyote vocals is what the pups know at that time, so that's what they'll run into, as well as the adults. The adults are more apt to come to the pup distresses and the prey distress sounds if you're trying not to target pups. But so if I was starting out, I would go ahead and crowd them. If it were me, the way that when we go to Tennessee, we've got groups of coyotes already located. I'm going to start a little bit farther away from where we've got the coyotes pinned. So I'm going to start approximately 400 yards, quarter mile from where that pin is at. And the reason I do this is because I mentioned those adults are working like a satellite around the pups. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to do is pick off the adults, lower my odds of calling those pups in first. Mm-hmm. So I'll set up a little bit farther away. Now I may not kill a coyote right there. I may be too far from the pups for the adults to come in, but that's where I'll make my first stand. And I'll run through just a short few sounds. I may play some fawn distress to try to pick off an adult. And if I kill an adult, then I'm going to move to that 200-yard range or closer to where those pups were and try to kill some more, especially if I'm trying to manage for predators,
Sure.
wipe out as many coyotes.
So
as
you
I
can't.
can.
You're trying to kill multiple coyotes.
So does
great.
does the gunshot
Terminator.
affect them that much? You had mentioned pulling up in the truck and not worrying about that.
Sometimes when you shoot one and kill one, you won't call the other ones in, but they're so aggressive this time of the year because of the pup rearing aspect.
Okay.
That what you want to do is after you shoot one, you'll go to stuff, their fight sounds that work really well for calling them back in. There's one called Pound Town, Fight Challenge, stuff like that. And those are the type sounds that I'm going to go to after I shoot one.
Pool hall.
And,
That's right.
And a lot of times you can kill multiple coyotes.
And then as far as wind or thermals goes, you say they're aggressive. So do they just come right in, or do they make like a downwind swing? Do you need to be ready to shoot? Yeah. I mean, how does that often play out?
They have a tendency to circle downwind every time. It's just instinctual for them. A lot of times when you're dealing with pups and you know where those coyotes are at, they're aggressive enough that you'll get what coyote hunters refer to as hard chargers, where they just throw caution to the wind. They hear that sound and they beeline the call. So those coyotes don't circle downwind, but you will have some of them that are going to circle downwind, and I try to compensate for that with the way that I set up my call. And in the South, you know, I'm sure y'all have a lot of it here in Mississippi. I've hunted Mississippi a little bit, and it's similar to the way I hunt at home. You know, we're typically hunting wood blocks, and a lot of times these family groups of coyotes are going to be on drainages, creeks, you know, stuff like that, edges that you can use to your advantage. And that's what I think about when I set up our SMZs, where it's, you know, a strip running through a thicket. So depending on what kind of wind I've got, I always offset that call. If I'm hunting with a shotgun, I'll offset that call about as far as I can see and shoot to the upwind side. So it's usually stuck way out over here.
So they pretty much kind of got to show themselves to get downwind of you.
Right. Yeah. If they do circle downwind, even if they run, for example, one of my favorite setups are on these SMZs or on these creek bottom stuff where you've got edges and you've got a crosswind set up, let's say right to left. The coyotes may howl, you know, over here or over there. It doesn't matter. But that wind blowing right to left, I expect the coyotes to show up over here, especially when you've got two edges. So I'll stick that call on this edge of that SMZ or creek bottom, upwind of me. I'm setting to where I can shoot to this edge, and I can shoot to the call if he hard charges. So when they come in,
I totally forgot that you can't. I'm thinking turkey hunting, and I'm calling, and that's all you have. But it's kind of like the buddy call with the electronic call. You can use that for bait as to what they're coming to. I never crossed my mind. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. And then they're remote operated, so
and that, you know, you can use that. If you put a little thought into your setup with that e-call, you can manipulate and take advantage of a coyote's tendencies.
What about the visual stuff, like the little rabbit tail twitching or whatever? Does that help or use those at all?
I have in the past. I'm not a big fan of decoys in the typical setups that I hunt because usually by the time they get to where they could see the decoy,
they're in range.
They're pretty close, and a lot of times that decoy hangs them up, you know, or makes them. You know, they may be running in and they'll stop and start watching it out of shotgun range, or it will make them make a bigger, harder loop downwind to try to smell what they're seeing.
Right.
Now, in certain, you know, if you're hunting wide open country, then a decoy can be of use to where you're trying to pull a coyote even into rifle range, and you're in that wide open stuff where you can see a mile. And that coyote tops the hill at 500 yards, and he can see to where the source of the sound is.
Just like a longbeard, we always say if you're hunting wide open timber like that, you better be where you can shoot to the spot he can see you from. You know what I mean? So sounds like the same thing with coyotes if you can.
Very similar.
It is. The bow hunting, you know, there are a pile of deer hunters and turkey hunters that can take so much from their deer and turkey hunting, just like you just talked about. You can take so much of that and apply it to coyote hunting and take advantage of all those times of the year. That's what got me into coyote hunting. I mean, I'm a deer bow hunter. That's what my favorite thing is. And then when turkey season comes in, I'm fishing to hunt turkeys until, you know, they season's over.
So they tell you can't.
Yeah,
that's right. That's the same way we are.
I mean, I'm going to find one to hunt somewhere. I might have to cross a state line if I don't have any paper in my pocket, but I'm going to find one to hunt.
What about the stress of a rabbit or whatever it calls? Is that less effective than actual making a coyote vocalization? And how's that compare to like bobcats too?
The prey distress stuff, the rabbit distresses, the birds, they're probably the most popular. They're definitely the most popular way to coyote call or bobcat, predator call, and that's what most people start using when they get into it. During your fall and winter months, I use a lot of prey distress sounds. I still add the vocals in, but time of the year, I mean, it's a very complex deal, and I kind of break the coyote season down by, if you start with what I would say starts the coyote life cycle, which would be their denning, you know, having the pups. So your denning time frame starts in that January, February time frame. That rolls into where we're at right now with pup rearing. Then you roll from pup rearing into family bust up, tail end of summer, early fall. And then from family bust up, you roll into pairing that will tie right back around. Your pairing breeding will tie right back into your denning. So every one of those are different. Those are different time frames in the coyote's life cycle and different sounds. Any sound will work year round, but different times in that life cycle, you'll have different sounds that are more effective at certain times of the year. So knowing their behavior and knowing their life cycle, what time of the year you're in, that plays a role into what sounds you're going to use on stand and in what order and some of that stuff.
Yeah, so like with predator hunting, in a lot of states, the seasons are almost open year round.
Right.
And so it's different than like spring turkey hunting. We're focusing on certain types of calls and behaviors, whereas if you're chasing coyotes year round, you're going to be changing your tactics based on their behavior. So
Right.
it's a lot more complex to learn how to do it the right way.
Yeah, and that's the raising the coyotes, that side of it, and documenting that life cycle and the behavior
Played
changes.
a big role in.
Played a huge role in, not only my success, but sharing all that information has made people a lot more successful throughout the year.
You're to the point where you can teach us all you can remember, but you're just instinctive when you go out there. You probably don't even think about what you're doing. It just comes natural. You've been around them so much and studied it so much.
With the repetition of hunting them throughout the year, you do start just like you said. Y'all, even though you can't hunt turkeys year round, anybody that loves to turkey hunt learns about turkeys and the way they group back up and then bust apart and all of that stuff. So if you could turkey hunt year round and you were gonna try to turkey hunt year round, any good turkey hunter knows that he would have to change the stuff that works on a spring gobbler that's 100%. Fired up. Isn't gonna work on him at other times of the year. So the same thing relates to the coyotes.
So would you say the summer thing is more fun? Like to us, spring turkey hunting is way more fun than, sitting there in the summer or something and hoping something shows up.
I like that spring, summer, or basically the summer coyote calling because of the vocal side of it. I like to call animals that are vocal.
Right.
So it's just like,
They're
you
playing
go out
the
there
game.
and turkey hunt, if you go out there and turkey hunt and nothing's gobbling, you can still sit out there and call one up and kill one. And you can do coyotes like that throughout the year. But it's not as fun as when they're gobbling back or howling back, So that's my favorite time, and that's also when they're the most aggressive.
So that goes through, say, July?
Well, the vocal stuff is just now really starting to pick up. So June is when the pups are starting to get big enough and the pup rearing time frame starts up. So you've got that separation between adults and pups, and they start getting really vocal to communicate. And that carries over and starts peaking in July and August.
Okay.
And then we'll start to taper a little bit all the way through about September. So from June to September, you can hunt daytime vocal coyotes and go out there and howl and get a howl back and all that.
I don't know if I can stand daytime right now.
With the days as long as they are, this would be a great opportunity for somebody to go and try to hunt a coyote before work or even after work.
After work,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you see any difference in their smelling capabilities in the hotter, drier, more or sometimes more humid times of the year? Like in the summer, do they smell worse? I just think of dogs. I mean,
You talking about, do the coyotes stink worse?
no. Is their sense
Their noses
sense? Yeah. Is their sense like their sense of smell? Is it worse at that time of year?
I think it probably relates right to other canines or anything, when you've got a higher moisture content or any of that stuff. I think they probably have a heightened sense of smell, but they can smell so good
It's amazing.
that even when they're
Even a bad
in that
day is-
dry, hot, when conditions are the worst for a tracking dog or a canine in general, or probably any mammal that uses its nose, when the conditions are at their worst, they are still so good that you better have that wind in your favor, because if they get downwind, it's over with.
So is there anything that you learned from these litters that you've raised that just totally went across against what you thought you knew about coyotes?
One of the things was the vocal stuff that I mentioned earlier. Everybody, it was just kind of common thought that coyote howling and vocals scared the bulk of your coyotes. And I quickly learned that coyote vocals, howling in particular, that is the best sound for calling in the littlest of the pups, because that's what they know at that time frame. So that was probably the biggest eye opener. But there's been a lot of stuff that I've figured out that goes against some of the literature that's out there. That's a lot of this is older. It's just like everything else. You remember when you go into whitetails. Remember when scrapes first started? You first started reading about scrapes, and they thought that this scrape was made by one big dominant buck, and that whole deal. And then as time progressed, they started figuring out that you put a camera on one of these scrapes, you get 50 different bucks passing through there.
Or that huge rub that might just be one little young buck.
Gosh. I've had that happen so many times when I was younger. Huge cedar tree, like bigger than your thigh or bigger than that. It's like, oh my gosh, this must be kahuna. And then I sit there and hunt it day after day, and finally a spike comes up there and rips it to shreds.
Yeah.
So has your interest in canines, has it taken you anywhere where wolves live?
Not yet. One thing that I don't like to do, I don't like to travel. So I love being at home. I like
being,
lot of parallels there.
I'm a true homeboy. I like to sit on my porch with my wife and get up and go to the woods every day. And my truck rarely leaves a gravel road unless I've got to do.
At some point you're doing push-ups or something. Yeah.
We actually have, my wife, she works out too, and we actually have a gym at the house. So pretty much everything
I believe
that we do is.
Y'all work out
right
too.
there.
I don't know if you noticed this.
I did notice. I was going to mention that. I was going to ask you, what.
He's our local
He does a lot of
gym rat.
stretching.
Yeah.
He does a lot of stretching.
Bob is actually pretty hardcore.
He is.
Yeah,
So-
he goes every day.
Well, let me ask this. So have you ever been with your pack out in the woods in the spring and a turkey gobbled somewhere? Did they pay attention to that? Did they key in on that?
Good question.
They would. They don't let hardly anything by. Now I'll tell you what, I've got video footage of this. I have so much video footage that I'm still sitting on that I've recorded and I'll tell you how much it is. I know y'all do a lot of video stuff. I've got about 3 terabytes of documented footage that I've never released on these coyotes, and a lot of it is me just following them around in the woods and them catching stuff and doing some amazing stuff that you just have to see it to believe it. I didn't hear this turkey gobble. I didn't see this turkey, but I was out there with them. And I don't know if this turkey was already dead or if the coyote caught it. But I was following them around in the woods. They're doing their thing. They're coming and going. I'll lose sight of them. Then they'll make a pass, almost like hunting with a squirrel dog or something. You see them, then they're gone, and then they make a pass back by you. Well, I'm just walking through the woods, and I think there was 3 or 4 coyotes with me in the general area that I'm catching glimpses of back and forth. Well, I'm going down through there, hear a commotion, and look up, and one of those coyotes has a gobbler turkey. And and it's the turkey's already dead, and this coyote is trying to keep it away from the other coyotes. So it's running. A lot of the footage is of it trying to keep it away from the other coyotes, and then setting it down and it's trying to eat on this turkey. And it was a full-grown gobbler
There you
turkey,
have it.
That it
Man.
and the turkey was fresh. Now, I don't know if something else had killed the turkey or if the coyote caught the turkey.
Wow.
But
Well, we've always wondered if a turkey's out there, he's strutting, he's got his fan up, it seemed like they would be attracted to, they would hear that and think,
Yeah, but I would think a mature gobbler would tear his tail up before, it'd be the hardest thing. If I was a coyote, I think I'd just be running out of rabbits and rats and stuff before I tried out a long spurred old gobbler, But who knows? I probably 3 or 4 times for sure took the videos, had the coyote caught in a trap. My guy that does a lot of trapping, he's so good. And every time he's documented one caught and killed a turkey, it's been a Jake. And I don't know why. Maybe they're just dumber. But it's never been a longbeard and actually never been a hen. That's probably just coincidence, that part of it. But it's always been a Jake. Weird enough. There's probably, I know 3 of them for sure, maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
He's seen that.
Well, so we've got Lanny.
Yeah.
Look at me when I'm talking to you now. Pay attention to me.
I'm learning.
Let's come back to him with some really good questions here at the end. Well, let's turn it over to Mac. Let's do a trivia. And I think he's got a trivia for us.
No.
But then when we
For
finish,
you. Actually, for you.
when we finish the trivia, I want to turn it to you, and let's come up with a good question for him to close it out.
Today's trivia is brought to you by Sheffield Financial. Explore swift, effortless, and convenient financing for power sports, outdoor power equipment, and trailers. Fueling your pursuits in hunting, fishing, and game keeping. More details at sheffieldfinancial.com.
Okay. All right.
Richie Rich.
Yeah, well, Richie's on vacation, so but he's still here in spirit, for doing the Sheffield commercial for us. So my understanding is you've got a trivia question. Mac, somebody's already won. Who's already won the prize?
So C Flow 221 has won a Drake summer shirt.
Flow 221.
That sounds like a drug, doesn't it? Like,
Like some kind of
rap.
sinus congestion or something.
That sort of sound like a rapper to me.
Yeah. See, I thought I was thinking Flow.
I think it's like a Chris Flowers or something.
I never did. Speaking of rapper, I never did hear from Gucci Mane again.
What about What about Hank Williams Jr.?
I have not heard from him either.
Still, you still writing him letters?
Don't remind me of that. Hank, if you're listening,
Bobby just wants to talk to you.
Yeah, that's right. So, all right. So, Mac, what else we got to know?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a trivia.
So we got the prize. She wins a Drake shirt out of Jim Ronquist's private collection, I might add.
We're moving into Jim's closet after
God love you, Jim.
Yeah, I actually locked his.
Yeah, there's a new lock on that one.
So look,
No, it's empty. Y'all empty.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
if you stump us, you win a podcast trivia shirt.
Okay.
Now, I don't know that we got one that'll fit you, to be honest. With you.
I think I'm just guessing he's used to stretching them on the arms.
Yeah.
So, I mean, give us your best shot. Nobody's ever done it before.
Okay.
Nobody's ever. What?
All right.
I mean, we never get stomped.
Oh, God.
whatever,
Thanks,
yeah.
Bobby. Here we go.
All right, so it relates to coyote reproduction. Y'all have probably heard the coy dog deal. You know, all about the coy dogs and
the
all
coy
this
wolf.
stuff. And,
Yeah.
and there's a reason that it is possible, but it's very low odds. And do y'all know why? What it is about coyote reproduction, both with the male and the female, that makes that such a low odds deal with coyotes?
I've got a guess.
Mac's already on Google over there, I think.
Yeah. It's going to be totally off the wall, but I got a guess.
So the question, if I can rephrase the question, you're saying that the odds of them actually hooking up, connecting, and having a successful breeding situation
With a different species.
I'm gonna say it's because coyotes probably don't drink as much.
Yeah. You throw it out there?
Toxic. Let's not try to be funny, okay?
I mean, when you don't have a clue to an answer, you hadn't got anything else to do but try to be funny.
Here we go. You ready?
Yeah, go
They're
ahead.
monogamous.
That's a
great
that
guess.
kind of ties into it. That does.
Well, they
kinda
breed for
tie in-
life.
That does tie into it a little bit, but that's not.
Dang it.
That's not the.
Way to go, Bobby. You
That's
set me up for
That's a
failure.
very good answer.
That
though.
does tie to it though.
Okay. Well, maybe
So
a
that's
little
pretty
bit
good.
close.
I would have just. I really don't know. My answer would be silly. Like the dogs are a little more scared of the coyotes,
Yeah.
and maybe they can't.
That would tie to it too, but that's not it either.
I'm scared. I'm gonna get made fun of, but it has something to do with the birds and the bees.
Like the key in the lock.
It's not a menstrual. It's not a menstrual cycle. Just a different.
I was thinking in the way that they
Yeah.
do the deed is
Physiologically.
yeah, maybe so.
I think they do this deed the
No,
same way.
I mean,
no, it would. Are y'all ready for the?
Well, let's look at Mac. You
Matt,
got
come on,
anything?
get it.
I was gonna go like Mr. Toxie and say something with the menstrual cycle, but
But I know that we sell and breed dogs, they have to like lock up or they don't actually consummate the deal.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, that may be.
What about
something that
Rob?
they-
You got a
they-
guess?
They have a difference in the way they breed.
Here comes Mac.
All
Mac
right.
looks
All
bright.
right,
Here comes
I
Mac.
just had a. So could it be that a coyote has to have multiple encounters with another coyote for the diversity of the gene pool, that a dog consummating the marriage one time isn't enough to do it?
My answer gave you the thought, because we
I'm-
always breed them a couple times.
Not exactly, but a lot of what y'all said actually would tie to
So as a group,
more
we're getting
reasons.
close.
Yeah, that would be more reasons as to why it's so rare and usually involves human interaction of some kind. But the actual reason is male coyotes are sterile for 8 months out of the year. It takes them 2 months to dry, and it is related to the pairing of the female, her coming in estrus. It takes her 10 months to cycle.
How about that?
Once she has come in estrus, went through the one reproductive cycle. It takes her 10 months before she can do that again. So the window, and they're pairing at that time, the male and female coyotes pairing, which goes back to the monogamous deal, that stimulates both of them to start producing. And so him being sterile, her taking her that long to be able to cycle and come in estrus again, is why that window is so small. And then the coyotes not liking dogs most of the time. Right. So until I started raising coyotes, and this is something that I've seen, the dogs that we have that have been raised up in proximity to these coyotes, they're fine with them. The coyotes will mingle and mix with these dogs, and I have actually witnessed a couple of different, I've got videos of it, pictures on my phone, and I've never shown that stuff either, but a couple different instances to where, and it's always a female coyote. Mm-hmm. Female coyote and a male dog. The male coyotes breeding with a female dog is, without human interference, pretty much not going to happen. But a female coyote being in heat and a male dog being so, you know how aggressive they are when another female's in heat, that is a possibility if the coyote female will tolerate that male dog. And in most instances, she will not. The only time that I've ever seen that is in pups that, of course, human interference with us raising them being accepting of those dogs that they know. But when it's a stray dog that comes up, an unfamiliar dog, that coyote wants to kill that dog or get away from it. So that's why the coy dog deal, even though it is possible, is such a rare
We probably
thing
don't
in the wild.
want that. I'm just guessing in
No, you definitely
society and whatever. I
No.
don't-
There's
may
some,
sound like a novelty, but I'm guessing that would be a bad thing to spread.
oh,
Interesting survival
Definitely.
mechanism.
Well, I think we've had Dr. Dana Moran from Mississippi State over.
Warren, yeah.
She's said several times that occasionally somebody will send her a picture of a coyote that looks like a wolf,
Right.
and they will figure that coyote has had some kind of a dog in it, that got beefed up, I guess, its body size or something.
yeah.
But
And she said the same thing about black
Yeah,
coats
it
too.
can
That's a
happen.
domestic dog trait.
But
Remember
there's
that?
a big variety inside. Don't some males get really, really big?
Oh yeah, the largest one and I don't ever weigh coyotes and stuff like that, but early on, a buddy of mine, it's on one of the MFK videos on the channel. It is a giant. It comes in and it just looks like a normal big woolly coyote. He was just a big one. He weighed 54 pounds. That's the biggest one.
That's
that
big as
I've
that's
ever
big as a wolf.
Oh yeah, that thing was a big one. But most of them, are 40 in the 40s for a big one and smaller.
This is Lanny at the Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak. I've been shooting Nosler bullets as long as I've been wearing Mossy Oak. Nosler ballistic tip ammunition is made for knocking deer down right where they stand. Nosler's famous ballistic tip bullet is the key. It has controlled expansion and bone-crushing punch to turn a whitetail's lights out. Bring home more deer this year with ballistic tip ammunition from Nosler. Buy now at nosler.com.
All right, Mac. I think he won a shirt. We might need to get him 2 shirts and let him sew them together so we can have one shirt when it's all said and done.
He's used to stretching them.
He looks like guys that are just listening to this. He looks like Tony Atlas. He's just this the
Holding
guy.
the coyote world up.
Yeah, just I mean, your biceps have got to be like. How big
Bobby,
are they?
it's enough. My gosh. You
Bobby,
just,
don't embarrass like
He
you.
loves the focuses on
Man, they're
this
big.
stuff.
I was saying. You
I
got
don't
big.
know.
He usually just asks people if you can go turkey hunting, not how big their biceps are and how they got there.
That is kind of new for me.
I never had a man ask me how big.
I think he will.
I couldn't help. Is that are you gonna timestamp that to
Yeah,
take
we
it
might.
out?
No, we're going to leave that in there for sure.
Hey, Rick, that stays.
That's
By
a
order of the
teaser.
boss.
That's a teaser on Facebook right
Yes,
there.
sir.
Let's get back serious. Lanny, you got a good question.
I don't know if it's a good question, but I want to ask it. You know, recently we've started talking internally. Obviously, we talk about predation and predators and ambush predators all the time. But we have a lot of foxes here, and we've recently seen a video of a gray fox ambushing a wild turkey and successfully taking it. I guess, is their behavior that much different than a coyote, or would you use the same kind of tactics and time frame around shooting foxes too, or killing foxes? Or
Yeah, and I've always heard that a coyote influx will run foxes off, or they'll kill them, or how do they intermingle too?
Yeah, the coyotes don't tolerate the fox very well. I've seen a huge decline in our gray fox population. When I was a kid trapping and catching the gray fox, I could catch gray fox on any back road that I went down. Catch them, call them up. We would have double-digit days calling gray fox.
yeah.
Now you've got to get in there close to town, close to rural areas, where there's houses and stuff like that, and that's where your fox are. And it's because the coyote population has come on so strong and pushed the fox out, killed the fox.
Interesting.
You know,
They
where
don't
we
tolerate
turkey hunting in
Wasn't that bad a
Texas, the
question?
gray fox hunting is a big sport, and they're everywhere. But they, because it's big sheep country, they have wiped the coyotes out. In fact, I can remember like a farmer out there or a sheep farmer sees a coyote, calls the neighbors, they're all out, and they don't come back till they kill this coyote, or they call a guy with a helicopter to get it. They're so devastating on the sheep and stuff, so they don't allow them. And there's lots of gray foxes.
The fox and coyote, they don't mix well. And as far as calling fox, if you ask, how much it relates, a lot of it's the same. You can get by with a whole lot more, especially on a gray fox. A red fox is more like a coyote in the way that he works a call. A red fox uses his nose more. He's a little more timid coming to the call. So, but the gray fox, if you get out there and want to call a gray fox, you can use their own voice. So gray fox distress sounds. That if I'm calling gray fox and I'm targeting gray fox, that's pretty much the only thing I run. I'm just running through. We've got a sound called super gray, and that's what I turn on in those gray fox. If you're in there where they live at,
Wow.
they're extremely aggressive. You can get by with them smelling you a lot of times. They know you're there, but they're so aggressive to the call. They'll go to barking at you and run in circles around the call, and you can really thump them and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Same thing with coons and coon calling. They're very aggressive to the call, and
We can call coons.
if you want to wipe out as far as property management and
Yeah.
coons and stuff
We got to
like
talk
on
about
this,
this,
I need to show you some video clips.
Yeah,
I do
stick
it with
around when this is over.
a longbow and call in and kill 30 plus coons a day, just walking. Just take off down.
Tell us what a coon call sounds like.
we
What
gotta get on this.
What would it sound?
It's a coon in distress. It's young coons in distress usually. I've got fight sounds. I've raised coons specifically, done the same thing with coons that I've done with coyotes, specifically to record their vocals.
This might be more
And
fun than trapping them.
Then, when I'm shooting them at my feet, with a longbow. Or, if you really want to wipe them out, shotgun or whatever. And I'm not targeting den trees. When you got populations of coon like we do in
Everywhere around here.
Arkansas, Mississippi, up and down these river bottom
thick.
stuff, you can just have a field day, especially when there's 2 times a year it works really good, when the coons are rutting. And then my favorite time to do it is when right now, on through till end of summer, just like with the coyotes, when those coon kittens, coon pups, whatever you want to call them, when they get up weaning age and they start following that sow coon around, they're out of the den tree and active all day long. A lot of times I do it during the middle of the day. Wow. We'll just
Ease around and
We may have
call
to
them.
just do a
It's
whole
quick,
podcast
too.
on
Yeah,
that.
no doubt about it.
So, got to ask, in your opinion, I realize you've lived in the woods with everything, which is incredible that you hadn't documented research like, Dr. Hurst or somebody. In your opinion, is red fox, gray fox, coyote, bobcat, raccoon, which one's harder on turkey populations, do you think? And I know you might could leave the coon out because that's a different type of predation. But basically,
With the coon in there, I would probably say the coon,
Right.
especially when they're nested.
of the
If you're
eggs.
nested in
Right,
the eggs.
But okay, leave the coon out. What about the other four? Which one do you think? Because I'm just wondering how much. I've always thought that a coyote or any of them might be an opportunity to catch a grown turkey that they just stumble
Oh
onto
yeah,
or
no,
whatever.
they're going
but
to that.
which one of those actively targets the poults would be the one that would be worse on them? And I'm thinking that might be the cat, but I don't know.
I think the cat is probably. That's a hard question because your population of coyotes is usually greater
So
on the
much higher.
property, so
Yes,
you've got more
absolutely.
coyotes. So as a whole, they may be.
So per
but it's-
animal,
Impacted more.
Per animal, I would say, if you were just taking one coyote versus one cat, I don't want that cat.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I think that cat is more successful
Yeah.
with his attempts, than
That
the
makes
coyote
sense.
would
Now,
be.
they're so patient. Good gracious, they
I
can
think
just
they
sit
act-
there motionless forever and
I
wait
think
on
the
something.
coyotes, and I'm far from an expert on this. They're doing this to eat. I think bobcats are doing it for fun and to eat.
Yep.
And that cat, he's got claws and teeth, so he's more successful with his. I think they're both bad, on turkeys.
Oh yeah.
But
Wow.
that cat's probably more successful with his attempts, than the coyote is.
Anybody got anything else?
We could do this all
close
day.
Yeah,
it
nah.
out?
Will you come back so we can
Yes.
talk some more?
Yeah, man,
or do another one. Yes.
I enjoyed it. It's always fun talking hunting stuff. So
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, it
anytime.
is.
Yeah.
Man.
Appreciate y'all having me on.
I
Yes,
bet
sir.
you've got some good bow hunting strategies too. If that's your true obsession, then we may need to have you back sometime to talk about that.
Man,
For
I,
sure.
I could tell you about falling out of a tree and breaking my back and a life-changing experience bow hunting. But anyway,
Let me
that's
just point out one
all
thing,
kinds
Bobby.
of stories.
The one thing that I noticed, kind of looking beyond the obvious from the first time he started talking till all the way through, is he so many times he would use the word, "I was so fortunate, I was so fortunate, I was so fortunate," and that's the little lesson I want everybody to listen to. Beyond all his knowledge of wildlife, is that he's living with that heart of gratitude, and
Yeah.
he's got a spring in his step, and he's taking on every day and loving what he's doing. That's such a gift.
Yeah, it is.
Well, that was I do want to say this. You mentioning that when Rob called me and mentioned doing this podcast, I was glad that it worked out where we could do it in person because I've listened to a lot of y'all's stuff, and that's one of the things that the name Gamekeeper alone says it, but that's one of the things that I always like about what y'all do. There is that. I mean, y'all have made it. You're successful, but you always get that sense of you're still grounded. You still appreciate. You still recognize, how blessed and fortunate you are, and so that appeals to somebody like me that's listening.
Yeah.
And,
Well, thank you, because we are blessed. We're
Yeah.
very lucky.
Faith
and
first.
just to get to do what you love in life is such a gift.
That is. Yeah. So Torry Cook, we need to give kudos to your parents. They did a
Yeah.
great job
Yeah.
raising you.
Sure did.
And your wife apparently puts
And
up
your
with you pretty
personal
well.
trainer, too, no doubt.
I appreciate. Hey, without my parents and my wife, this doesn't happen. And it took me
There
a
you
few
go.
years, and I had some other people that were very, big parts of me getting to where I am now, and I'm very grateful. And after falling out of that tree, there's not a day that I wake up
Bet.
that I don't think about that stuff. So anyway, I appreciate that. Appreciate you mentioning them.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
sir.
we'll have in the show notes, we'll have how to find out about your call business.
Yeah.
And guys can follow you on Instagram or YouTube, wherever your social media takes. Rob will link all that stuff in the show notes. So
Appreciate it.
this has been
This is great.
Really
fascinating.
is
I've
interesting.
got this
Best
on
one
speed
ever,
dial.
yeah.
Hell, I've got it on speed dial. That is the weakest link in my
Yeah, no doubt about
arsenal and what I love to do and all the hunting that I've ever done, and that is exactly what he is best at. So
Yeah, we need to get on it.
welcome the help and the advice and the knowledge.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll trade out. I told them y'all need to help me with food plots. I'm trying to learn.
Now
that side.
I'm your huckleberry. on that one.
We can do that.
Yeah, we'll certainly do that. So it's been our pleasure, and thank you for coming. So
Appreciate y'all having me.
Yes,
good
sir.
one. A good
That was a
one.
great
why
one.
don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Rob.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.